Hey, this is Mike Lindsay from Vital MX. We're out here at Glen Helen Raceway today, and we have a couple different Yamahas. We have a 2024 YZ250F, a 2024 YZ450F, and YZ250F with a full GYTR engine kit. That's cylinder head, cams, valve train, piston kit, their mapping, a little bit of VPT4, etc. Now, we did one of these tests last year, taking a stock 250 versus GYTR. This year, we decided to mix the 450 in. We have 3 different range of test riders here. And we also did a little bit of lap time stuff at the very end of the day here at the infamous Glen Helen. I guess I'll go first. I learned something very valuable today. Power is everything and power is nothing. And what I mean by that is, yes, each bike with more power has its, of course, benefits, but there is standout reasons why just having more power isn't always better. So first off, the stock 250 we use today is totally stock, same suspension settings as our GYTR bike, but that bike has like 25 coming up on 30 hours on it. It is very broken in. It feels very different to the GYTR bike on the chassis suspension. GYTR bike has 1 hour on it. GYTR bike is straight up faster. The stock bike handles better in places because it is so broken in it. So for me, GYTR bike's super noticeable on the hills. It pulls much better mid to top. It pulls longer. You can utilize that in places. On my hot lap on it, I definitely could feel the differences when I was really pushing and trying to just use the power. But at the same time, again, the stock bike was easier to turn in places. So combine the two, I'd probably be a little bit better off. I was like 1.2, 1.3 seconds faster on the GYTR bike. So definitely a little bit noticeable. Jump on the 450, it's a whole different ball game. All the power in the world, but all the inertia to get you in trouble. I felt terrible on my 450 lap, but somehow my lap time landed right smack dab between my stock 250 and my GYTR, purely because I could use the 450 power on a couple of these hills while I completely stumbled through corners on the rest of the track. So basically, my little takeaway at the end is, yes, 250s are easier to ride. Yes, a mod 250 is noticeable in places. At the same time, more power is better, a better handling bike is better. I could throw a bunch of different things on these like we do with project bikes, and yeah, you're gonna make a better motorcycle. Luke, what'd you learn today?
Similar things, actually, and you know, that was really apparent when we did almost get the stopwatch out and you start to see the differences, you know, with data, right? So you feel it and you know, okay, this one's a little bit more broken in, and the stock bike, you can ride really hard, and that extra little bit that you push, then you feel a little bit more comfortable, right? Where then you get the GYTR bike, the motor's fun, it pulls harder, longer, which I did like, but then the chassis is newer and stiffer. So you're almost, you're winning one and then losing the other just by the differences on, you know, the chassis time. And then when you bring the 450 into it, of course, it's like a different ball game, right? You know, going back to back, you go do a lap and then come back in and switch to a 450. It's crazy how much you notice how much faster it is, and like you said, how quickly you can get yourself into trouble. With all of that being said, I was the slowest on the 450, the fastest on the GYTR bike, and then right in the middle on the stock bike. But when you asked me, I said the stock bike was my favorite.
Yeah, and you were only like 2 or 3 tenths faster on the GYTR. When I asked you, I said, you know, quiz, what are you faster on? You thought the stock 250 because again, it was so broken in. You were like, I could push so deep into the corners. You swore that you felt better on that, which again, to me still shows like where my lap time was bigger. Difference, like the GYTR bike definitely has no spot because you made up what you're feeling the stock bike, like you knew you're sending it deeper into corners, but you are making it up somewhere with the power on that bike, on acceleration, on the hills. But again, you were able to utilize more of the broken in bike, where again, right, I look at it as like, okay, the GYTR stuff's helpful, but good suspension would be helpful because just a bike that was more broken in and more plush was better than a fresh chassis, which, I mean, really no surprise there, but it was kind of cool because I think the last time when I did this GYTR test, we rode 2 bikes that were very similar in hours, so they felt very identical other than the power, where these two 250s actually felt this, you know, similar, way better, way more close to the same than the 450, but at the same time, they actually felt fairly different at the same time.
Yeah, I think it really opens your eyes, right, to how much suspension does help, even when it is broken in. I mean, then, you know, when people service their suspension at intervals, it shows you how much of a difference that is gonna make. And like you say, like, I know I was able to charge down the hill so much faster on the stock bike because I'd push right into that next tabletop at the bottom, whereas on the GYTR 250, I was a little bit more hesitant and I'd kind of chop the throttle, but then I'd make it, as soon as we turn around and go back up the hill, it's gonna pull longer and harder. So for me, I had a ton of fun riding both the 250Fs. You know, they both have so many good little bits that you can take from them, being that it's not massive differences, obviously chassis and stuff like that, but man, it is fun, and I think that the broken-in bike is nice.
Let's take all the GYTR parts and put it on my 25-30 hour chassis, and we're better probably.
Give it to me. Yep.
There you go. Jamie, so actually I'll throw one other thing. You were the fastest of us. I'm like 4 seconds off you. He is the fastest. I'm like 4 seconds off, and then Jamie, you're like you're the slow vet guy in the test. You're about 15 seconds off. But I think there's something funny that is like me and him ride 250s a lot, so we can get that little bit difference out of the GYTR bike. So you would think, I don't mean it's that way, slower vet guy, not as good cornering speed, you think power would make a bigger difference. Not as much. You were fastest on the 450 on your final lap, and you've been riding that 450 a lot, but your first you did 2 time laps each bike. Your first 450 time was basically the same as your stock 250 time, and you were not faster on the GYTR bike. You were like half a second off on the 250. So even though the 250 had more power, I mean, again, even though that 250, again, we said the GYTR bike makes more mid to top, for somebody with your skill set, the mid to top probably didn't help that much.
Only going up the hill, that's where I noticed it and I liked it. But in the corners, coming out of the corners, the stock bike didn't hit as hard. And for me, with the lack of talent, thank you very much, I was happier to have a little bit less power. But also going down the hills, as Luke said, I felt like the chassis felt more secure. I was more secure with going down the hill and charging down the hill on the 250. But I am absolutely a 450 guy when it comes to these two bikes. I haven't been on 250F in a long time. And yeah, the stock one for me was my favorite of the 250 by far.
Yeah. The crazy one, so you've been a big proponent of riding 350s. We've got you a YZ450. You spent a lot of time last year. Like the other day, you even rode another 350. You're like, man, 350s are pretty good. But we went all the way, jumped down to 250, and that jump's a lot bigger than 450 to 350.
It's bigger than I thought it was, like significantly. The 350 still has enough power that it almost mimics a 450 at times. The 250 is a lot of work. And I haven't had to rev out a bike a lot in a long time, but the GYTR one will get you there very quickly. I just didn't want it to get me there that quickly. So for me, the stock one was, the stock YZF 250 was my favorite of the 250s.
So I guess part of what that helps me answer with the GYTR kit is I've had a few people hit me up that aren't Austrian guys. Same thing, they're kind of, I don't want a 450, but I want more power than a 250. I've had a few people hit me up when they saw we did the last GYTR test, and they're like, hey, I want to buy, I'm thinking about getting a Yamaha 250. Would this be something good to get me closer to that middle ground? I've had to tell them, not quite, because this, again, the power in this is more mid to top. Something that's kind of helped me answer. I kind of already knew it, but it is interesting to get in those comparisons, 450, 350, 250, 250 mod, like talking about that is, there are some people that just don't want an Austrian 350. They wish a Japanese guy, brand made a 350. So I've had people hit me up like, hey, Yamaha 250F's the most torquey, supposedly in the group. Like, what if I got a GYTR kit one? Would that solve it? Would that get me close to that 350? And I have to tell them all the time, like, it's not quite for that. Like I said, it's more mid to top. It's more aggressive. It's not really going to get you that difference where if maybe you did like a big bore on a 250. I will say there's some real heavy positives with the GYTR kit. It is all tested by the guys we know here, Yamaha here in the USA do their testing crew. They put it through very similar R&D and endurance testing as the stock bike. So their head, their cams, their piston kit is meant to go really long, where sometimes with aftermarket, you don't know if the piston, you know, is only good for 10 hours, 15, 20. They put a lot of, they still give a generous interval, but you can put one of these on and run 40, 50 hours on top end pretty easy. So that's the cool part, is you're getting good aftermarket style performance of a ported head, all that stuff, but you have the safety factor. Now, last year's kit came with, you could buy it with the Vortex ECU. So this year's kit is cheaper by almost like $1,000. However, I miss the Vortex ECU because that gets you more that low to mid response, gets you to tweak the character more. I'm not entirely bummed it's on the GYTR kit because it was a very basic Vortex and Yamaha did a slight tweak too. I would get this kit and then just spend the money to go to an XPR, to somebody that's really known for Vortexes. I think you would get the best combination of getting them to do a box for it. And then you would get a lot of that mid to top gain from the GYTR kit, but you would be able to get a lot more low to mid, you'd be able to get less engine brake, get what you want, and explain it to a guy like, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what fuel I'm running, etc. You could really break it down to your, tailored to your needs. Because either way, you're still in the GYTR kit, the low $2,000 range for the head, cams, everything, the pistons, a couple $100 on top of that. So the Vortex 9000, you're in at mid 3000s, which if you go to a good engine guy, that's what you're going to be in, heads, pistons, and ECUs anyways. But again, the positive here is you're getting a complete cylinder head. If you know you're going to be on Yamaha's for all, you could trade it out. You could sell your stalker. There's a way to kind of make up for some of that cost. That's pretty cool. Interesting note Yamaha mentioned to us is a GYTR complete head cam valve train is cheaper than the OEM one if you were to have a bike break and you need to replace everything. It's actually cheaper to buy all the GYTR components completely built and assembled than it is the part out stock parts. So that's also an option. They said they've had some dealerships do. I said at the end though, Ashizu, because you like to do bike builds like me all the time, kind of that weight of like, do I do really good suspension? Do I do motor mods? There is positive and negatives to each. Really at the end of the day, you can get, each has their positives, right? But there's also reasons why you almost need both if you're really trying to make gains.
Absolutely. I think that this is a brilliant thing that they offer because it's tested to the max, right? So you can trust what you're getting. It comes assembled and it does make the bike more fun. As you mentioned, I would like to get a little bit more bottom end. So yes, you could go and buy this GYTR kit, get a Vortex mapped, and then now you've really got a good bike. And then, go and get your suspension done and you've got either a competitive 250F or, a really fun one for a vet rider. I still do believe though, if it is the guy that's, do I, get this kit for a 250 or get a 350 or whatever, right? Like what's that gap? I still think maybe you're better to, if you like, the Yamahas, you're better to maybe map the 450 with a smoother linear power because that's going to be a closer gap than, the 250 to the 350. There's a big displacement there to make up for. But it doesn't change that the bike does pull longer. It is a ton of fun. Man, this coupled with some, good suspension setup would be a really, really fun bike and a good test that I would like to try at some point.
Yeah, because we did, all of our lap times were done at the end of the day, like 1:30, 2 o'clock. So for me, the 1.2 seconds on the motor is noticeable, but also I would be probably another second and a half on top of that if I had good suspension. So I would be 3 seconds over the stock bike. So even 1.2 seconds a lap across like a 10 lap race, okay, I'm 12 seconds a lap, I'm 12 seconds faster during the length of the race. That's noticeable. Add in suspension as well. If I can get up to 2.5, 3 seconds faster on a bike, all of a sudden I'm 30 seconds faster over a 10 lap race, which is actually very noticeable. So again, you hear the dollar amount, you're like, I'm only a second lap faster. Okay, if you're play riding, really doesn't mean that much. Racing, you add it up, it does mean something.
Absolutely. And I think too, like, it's that difference that it makes, right? So then you go and you couple all that together and then it does change you from like, maybe you're the guy that's trying to qualify for a national like we were laughing about earlier, right? Like maybe that little bit of power and then you start to build it all together is gonna help you. So it is cool and it was a really fun day.
Last thing I'll say is, of course, if I have the budget, mod 250s are what I would always prefer for me personally to build, because the one hot lap I did on the 450, just naturally when you try to send it on a 450, I got arm pump in one lap on a damn 450. 250, I was very fresh feeling after my hot lap. The 450, I already had arm pump because I held my breath because I almost died twice, because that's what happens when you send a 450, especially when you come off the 250 and you try to take 250 lines.
Yeah, you can.
So for me personally, which would I pick? If budget's not an option or like not a restriction or anything, I will take a mod 250 every day of the week that's within reason.
Yep.
What would you take?
I would take a built 250F as well. Get the suspension, do the stuff to the motor. It's fun. And the biggest thing that you touched on earlier is that this gives it that durability factor, where that's where I'm always so scared to like go and really build a bike, because then you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to do a top end at 10 or 15 hours, which isn't reasonable for a lot of people, right? So this keeps that, and then you can have a fun bike. So yes, I do like a built 250F over, a 350 or 450.
I think the quote there, it shows the down chart, it's about a 7% gain across the range, which is relative to about 3.5 horsepower or so. It could be more if you run better fuel. We were just running basic T4. Pro 6 will get you another 0.5 horsepower, 3/4. Mapped even more with good Vortex, then you're up probably like 1.5 horsepower on top of that. Same question to you, Jamie. So stock 250, mod 250, or 450?
I'm gonna go 450 with the mellow map that we have in that bike, because I like to have that low extra power. I feel like I could wheelie over things that on the 250, if you have more talent, you could have done, but since I don't, I was just plowing into all this stuff. And on the 450, I feel like I could wheelie through it. And yeah, I'm gonna go 450. But the GYTR 250 looks sick with those graphics.
Oh yeah, stick around.
They are mean.
Definitely.
So.
All right, if you guys have any other questions, throw them in the comments section below. Anything about 250s mods, 450s, anything we talk about in this comparison. And if you like this content, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.